bridesmaids' luncheon, too. She waved a perfectly manicured hand. Maybe even a breakfast the day of. When I arched an eyebrow, she added, I downloaded Weddings from A to Z. I want everything done by the book, so there's no doubt that I have finally taken a prince. While Mom is the oldest sibling, and therefore numero uno in the big H, she still has to share control with my aunties. And if there's one thing Mom hates, besides my best friend Blythe, polyester blends, and anything early American, it's sharing. When Samael and I unite, our powers will merge, she went on. My sisters won't be able to challenge me again. No more family meetings, no more democracy. Her Ice Queen facade cracked for a split second, and she actually smiled. Hell will finally be a dictatorship, as your grandfather always meant it to be. I sighed. Here we go again. Gramps had been an archangel once upon a time. Then he'd had it out with the big guy upstairs, and bam, he'd been out on his ass. He'd gone into business for himself after that, but finding good help, particularly when you're the devil, is hard. All the liars and cheaters out there seemed to gravitate toward Gramps. He'd finally decided to stop trying to recruit a trustworthy right hand and sire his own. A son who wouldn't try to overthrow him, or milk him for all he was worth, or change the channel when the Dallas Cowboys were in the playoffs. A great plan, right? Except that Gramps hadn't had a son. He'd had a daughter. And then another daughter. And then another. And then another. Sheesh, you'd think the Einstein of all evil could orchestrate the birth of one measly male. But only the big man up high controls life and death, and my mom and her sisters are proof that he has a certifiable sense of humor. The jokes hadn't stopped there either. My ma had tried to make Gramps proud and squeeze out a boy. Instead, she'd ended up with me and my 3 older sisters. My aunts, same story. I have 36 cousins, all female, which explains why I'd started making up excuses to miss as many birthdays and family get-togethers as possible. Gramps had been tempted to try for kid number 5, but 4 nagging women proved more than he could handle, so he'd cut his losses and taken up golf, a hobby that had quickly turned to a passion. Just last year, he'd hit the PGA Tour to make a name for himself. He'd left specific instructions that his daughters continue to share duties and rule hell together, but Gramps still had the final say. Unless, of course, one of them joined with one of his demon chiefs in an official union. What can I say? Gramps is a total chauvinist. Anyhow, complete control would then fall to his trusted son-in-law, attaboy, and whichever daughter took the plunge first. I should have done this day one, my mother declared. Putting up with one egotistical male, even one as bossy and obnoxious as Samael, is much better than 3 know-it-all females. Samael, isn't he the chief demon of war? While every demon had a specialty, sex, war, slavery, IRS audits, only first-tier demons served as chiefs. They answered only to the ancients, like Gramps. Gramps and his ancient buddies had all been archangels at one time, but he'd been the only one with big enough cojones to revolt. He'd jumped ship first and taken charge down under, with the other ancients as his henchmen. Since Gramps was King Bee, his daughters were considered royalty and destined to rule. Meanwhile, the offspring of the other ancients had assumed chief demon positions. Samael is the chief of war and strife, she said almost proudly. Except my mother didn't do proud, which was my first clue that she didn't find Samael half as bossy and obnoxious as she wanted everyone to think. So, her ice-blue gaze met mine. What do you think? Can you pull it off? Pull off what? I was still in shock from her showing up at the hotel where I was neck-deep in a wedding that was about to commence in exactly 22 minutes, provided the bride didn't change her mind about her hairstyle again. The stylist had canceled at the last minute, and I jumped in